Where did you grow up? Where were you born?
I grew up in West Virginia, and it's marked here on the county. It's a very southern tip of West Virginia. It's called McDowell County. It's coal mining country. Very depressed area these days because they're not doing much coal mining anymore. But
how big was the town? How many population? Roughly?
Well, the town, I came from a town called English, and there was probably only maybe 300 people in English, but I lived about a mile from English and it was called a coal camp because the coal mines provided housing for the miners and so forth, which they had to pay for. And so I lived in a coal camp about a mile from English, and in the coal camp there was probably maybe 60 people, so quite small.
Yes. And your father worked in the mine?
He worked in the coal mines, yes.
What did he do you recall?
He was a mechanic. The way they mine coal, they're called continuous miners. They grind the coal off, you know, and then loads it into cars and so forth. And the two particular companies is Lee Norris or Joy Manufacturing. But he was a mechanic on continuous miners.
Now, did you have brothers and sisters?
I have 3 brothers, and 1 sister. My younger brother is the only one surviving. My sister and 2 older brothers have since passed away. But my sister and 2 older brothers were quite a bit younger than my younger brother and I, because when my dad came back from the war, it's like we had 2 families, you know.
Is that near Coalwood?
Pretty close to Coalwood, yes.
That's where the rocket boys were.
That's right. Well, that's where the Rockets were.
Yeah.
He went to Big Creek High School, and War is the high school that I attended, was where the Rocket Boys was from.
Okay.
What was the movie called? I don't think it was
October
October Sky.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So you knew that occurred during the same time you were in school?
They were quite a bit earlier.
Okay.
Yeah.
They were a little bit earlier than what I was when I.
They were in the 50s, I think.
Yeah, and I graduated in '64. So I think they had the memorabilia and stuff in the hallway of the high school and so forth, but it was before.
One of those boys came and lived in Arvada here for a number of years.
Really?
Yes, I can't remember which one it was.
Yeah. And the movie itself was like a collage because there were several of them, more so than what it showed in the movie. There were several more people involved in that, but the movie, well, movies are movies. So they've got to make them a little bit interesting. But
that is a nice movie to see if you haven't yet.
yeah. The thing we found interesting in it, coming from West Virginia, they tried filming it in West Virginia, and they had to go down. It was filmed like in Tennessee, because the mountains in West Virginia are too steep, and they couldn't get enough light because of the mountains to film it. So they had to go down somewhere. Like I say, they filmed it in Tennessee, where it was a little more open to where they could film it. But,
now, how large was your graduating class? Couldn't have
my
been
graduating class was 20 people.
20. Wow. So what did you, when you graduated, what were your initial thoughts? What were you going to do next in life?
Well, I had planned on being a commercial artist, So for a while I went to Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, and went to the Pittsburgh Art Institute, but lost interest in that. Then people from Appalachia, the places they go to, like here in Colorado, we have a lot of people from Nebraska, and Kansas comes to Denver and Colorado, you know, to make their fortune. In Appalachia, they go to Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Cincinnati, maybe Chicago. Very few people come as far west as I did. And so I worked in Cleveland for a little bit after I dropped out of art school and then came to Colorado. And when I came to Colorado, I had no idea what I was going to do. And I started out working as a carpenter. I worked as a carpenter during the day, and I became a hairdresser, a beautician.
That's an interesting career
I
choice.
went to school at night,
Yeah.
and I worked as a hairdresser for a year before I was drafted into the Army.
But one question again. I think you mentioned how you first were exposed to Colorado by family.
Right.
Family vacations.
Well, family vacations plus I was an Eagle Scout, a Boy Scout. And one of the big adventures that you make as a Boy Scout, if you can afford it, is come out to New Mexico. It's called Philmont. It's a Boy Scout ranch that you come out here and camp in the mountains of New Mexico. It's above Taos. And so initially I came to Colorado kind of through New Mexico. We flew into Denver and then drove in a bus down to Philmont. And then on the way home, we stopped at Bent's Fort. Actually, we stopped at the college in Los Alamos. Is it Los Alamos?
No, there's one at La Junta, too.
Well, at La Junta. It's La Junta. And because they have they're called Kasharis, and it's a Boy Scout group that used to be ran by a gentleman by the name of Buck Bershears, who has since passed away. But they specialize, and they're world-renowned. They travel all over the world doing this. But they do the solstice dances of mainly the Hopi and the Navajo, and the southwestern Indians. And there's a giant kiva. They have a giant kiva there on the college campus where they perform these dances and so forth. And it's large enough that Boy Scout troops coming through, actually coming back to Denver from Philmont, they spend the night, they sleep on the floor of the kiva, and they spend the night there and they see the performance of the Kashari dancers. And but then actually I fell in love with Colorado. My older brother worked for Martin Marietta out here, and we used to come out here on vacations whenever I was in high school, and decided that I wanted to come to Colorado after I graduated, and so eventually I did that.
In fact, as we go through, if you've any questions you'd like to ask Noah, please go ahead. I don't need to, have the total
Yeah, but
enjoyment there.
that was about my
Yeah.
early introduction to Colorado, and I was drafted in 1966 into the Army from Denver here.
So where did you initially report in? Where did you do your basic training
Okay.
and stuff?
I was sent to Fort Bliss, Texas, and did my basic training in Fort Bliss, Texas. And then my AIT I was sent to Fort Huachuca, Arizona, to the truck driving school there. They had a lineman school there too, but it was a lineman AIT and a truck driver's AIT. So they trained me as a truck driver. And after AIT, I was sent to Fort Sill, Oklahoma, to the OCS school in special services. I didn't go as a truck driver.
Of course not.
Of course not. Why would they do that?
Yes.
Might classify it, well, what we did at the OCS school is that we kind of drove, but we drove Jeeps. But we would deliver projectors and things like this to classrooms. We'd set classrooms up. We also did, Fort Sill is an artillery school. And that's the OCS, the Officer Candidate School there was for artillery officers. So one of the things that we had to do is in the evenings after, we'd have to go out on the artillery range and burn powder bags and things like that from them shooting during the day, and just sort of police the place up, you know. And so, you know, that's basically, like I say, it was special services, but because some of the gentlemen, one of the gentlemen in our unit, he was the commandant's driver, which basically what he did is he took the wife to the grocery store and to the beauty shop and stuff. He very seldom drove the general. But he was in our group also. So that's so that between Fort Bliss and Fort Huachuca and Fort Sill, that was the first year of my 2-year service.
So they eventually discovered you hanging around in Fort Bliss and then off to Vietnam?
No, I was assigned, you know, there at Fort Sill, and from there,
Oh yeah, Fort Sill.
I went to Vietnam. Now, for whatever reason, I knew that I was going to the 25th Infantry Division.
And so,
Oh.
yeah.
I knew that I was going to most of the time whenever you go to California and you just are sent to Vietnam and you're assigned somewhere, but I knew I was going to the 25th Infantry Division whenever I left Fort Sill.
Okay. And that's the division base was at Cu Chi,
At Cu Chi.
northeast of Saigon. So you flew into probably Tan Son Nhut.
Flew into Tan Son Nhut. And I was in Tan Son Nhut for about a week. In fact, I have some pictures over here. One of the things, we, there again, had something to do. We were working on a portable swimming pool for, you know, for the airmen. So I worked on a portable swimming pool. Now, I heard later on that once they got it completed and they filled it, it collapsed. But I'm not sure. But
So from there, then you were assigned to the 4th Battalion Mech?
I was assigned to the 4th Battalion Mechanized Infantry out of Cu Chi.
Now, maybe explain to everyone, what's the difference between mechanized infantry versus straight leg?
Okay. There's actually quite a bit of difference. You can see there's a picture there, and in my paintings, you'll see that I depict they're armored personnel carriers, M113A1s. And they're commonly called a track. So whenever I'm talking, if I say track, I mean an APC. And we're an infantry battalion, but I was not in a line unit. I was assigned to headquarters company. And here again, I went there, the day that I went there was 3 of us went there. The ammo technician was coming home in 2 weeks, so they needed an ammo technician replacement. I was first in line, so I became the new ammo technician. There again, didn't drive a truck again.
Right.
You know, so within 2 weeks, I learned enough about ammunition to that I could function, and by the end of the year, I was very proficient as an ammo technician. But my MOS was still 64B20, you know, technically. And so that's how I became an ammo technician. Now, I can do a fast breakdown on what a mechanized infantry battalion is, okay? One APC is a squad, considered a squad, and there's 10 people on it. There's 10 people to an APC. There's a driver, a gunner, and a loader. The other 7 men are riflemen. 2 of those riflemen carry an M60 machine gun, 7.62, belt-fed M60 machine gun. The other 5 personnel are riflemen with M16s, and 2 of those riflemen also carry what's called it's that M79 grenade launcher. It shoots a 40 millimeter grenade. It's like throwing a hand grenade 100 yards. So, so that's considered a squad. Now there's 4 squads to a platoon, which is 4 tracks. There's 4 platoons to a company. And that makes 16 tracks to a company. There's 4 companies to a battalion, and that's 64 tracks. So we had 64 tracks. Also assigned a headquarters company, which I was in, is Recon. And there's a company of Recon. So Recon has 16 tracks, so that's 16 more tracks. So the 64 tracks are approximately 640 men if we were full strength, plus another 160 for Recon. And that is the line units of a battalion.
So a mechanized unit is much more mobile on their own. You know, if you're straight leg infantry, you're relying on someone else to provide 2.5 trucks to move you around, or by helicopter and stuff like that. So,
now, straight leg infantry guys usually, they said they wouldn't be caught dead in a mechanized outfit because they're afraid of RPGs.
yeah.
And we did have a problem with RPGs, but if you consider the number of tracks that we had to the number that were destroyed by RPGs, it's minimal.
Yeah. The biggest threat to anyone, this is strictly aluminum. You know, it's pretty thick, but you're very susceptible if you run over a mine. You know, you're dead meat, or you're hit in the side by an RPG. So you definitely operate quite carefully.
And one of the things that we did in our battalion, these APCs came gasoline and they came diesel. We ran short a lot because we would not accept gasoline tracks. I don't know where they gave them. They gave them to the Arvins or who, but we wouldn't accept them because diesel burns profusely when it hits, but gasoline explodes. So, but like I say, we'd go down to Newport Docks there in Saigon to pick up new tracks, and if they were gasoline tracks, we'd leave them. And sometimes we had a problem with that because they didn't want us to leave them, but we didn't. We wouldn't. Plus, you see also that logistically, all the trucks and so forth we had, military trucks are called multi-fuel trucks. They'll run on anything that has an alcoholic content enough to burn, but they are more efficient on diesel. So all the trucks and so forth we use diesel. So if we had gasoline tracks, we'd have to carry 2 fuels. So we only carried 1 fuel.
So you were there during the Tet Offensive?
I was there during the Tet Offensive of '68.
So
yes.
what did your unit have to do for that?
Well, like Tet officially started like January 30th or 31st of 1968. But for us, we started getting contact with the NVA, which is the North Vietnamese regular army, instead of just VC, which were local. The VC were local people. The NVA were regular soldiers from North Vietnam. We started having contact about the 15th of December. Now, the 4th of the 23rd, you can see an area there, it's called the Iron Triangle. We were in the Iron Triangle when Tet started. And what we were doing in the Iron Triangle was pulling security for the 65th Engineers, the land clearing. They were trying to clear the tunnels, the tunnel complex out of the Iron Triangle. And what they were doing is they were trying to blow them up with, they're called Bangalore torpedoes, which is pure TNT. So that's an area, but we were pulling security for them.
Yeah. This area and other areas, even down towards Swan Lock, had extensive rubber plantations that the French had planted turn of the century and became actually a major focus for the Japanese during World War II. So those plantations were still there, very, very lined up rubber trees, just extensive area. And the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong used those areas in the more dense jungle to set up their logistics locations and places they could hide. So one of the approaches that was tried, unfortunately Agent Orange was another one, but we would bring in massive tractors, dozers that have extremely sharp blades, and you could basically cut down anything. But we had to rely on the infantry to provide the security for that area because we didn't have at all the heavy weapons that they normally would have. So they would kind of spread out, provide security in advance while we would come in and clean it. And then you go into the tunnels and we'd blow it up primarily with C4 explosives and stuff. So, yes.
May I ask a question?
No, please.
Sir, you said during the Tet Offensive you were stationed in the Iron Triangle?
Well, that's where we were when it started.
I'm sorry, okay.
Because eventually, well, it started in January, and we were in the Iron Triangle and that. So about the middle of February, we were moved down to the Saigon area. Okay. And down there, the area we were at, here again, the rubber plantations, but for some reason they were called woods. The Boloi Woods and the Hobo Woods, which is northwest of Saigon there.
About how far is that from Saigon?
Okay, you see on the map there it says Hoc Mon?
Yeah.
Hoc Mon and Hoc Mon Bridge, just right up, just up.
Okay, there's Saigon.
Saigon, just move it up to the left.
The left.
Right there.
Oh,
Hoc Mon.
Okay.
Hoc Mon Village and Hoc Mon Bridge. The Hobo Woods and the Boloi Woods was right around there.
That looks pretty close.
Yeah.
To Saigon.
Yeah.
Well, it was. That's and eventually after Tet Phase 1, we were moved over to consummate Air Base. But a good share of our fighting was around there in a place northwest of Saigon. It was called the Futo Racetracks. And that's not on the map, but that's where the 4th of the 23rd, well, units of the 25th Infantry. Not only the 4th of the 23rd, we had the 1st of the 5th Mechanized down there. We had the 1st and 2nd of the 27th, which is a straight leg infantry unit. 2nd of the 34th, or 2nd of the 22nd, which was another infantry unit. And but that's the area around basically where our units were. But there were other elements of the 25th all through 3rd Corps there, all the way from Tainan, you know, down to, you know, they were all over. But the 4th of the 23rd, basically, that's where they moved us to.
The big challenge all throughout Vietnam in this sort of environment was that you needed to provide protection to the small hamlets that were scattered everywhere. Because if you can't protect them, then you've lost the war to begin with. So the major challenge for the 25th, the 4th Division, all of us there, was you had to continually patrol certain areas.
Yeah.
And you had to find out where the North Vietnamese and the Viet Cong could retreat to in the evenings, or, you know, for protection. Because come nighttime, they would come out of their protective areas, come into the hamlets, you know, assassinate whoever, you know, take the young people away for soldiers and stuff like that. And it just crippled the ability to provide a sense of security to the people in that area. So that's essentially what they were all trying to do.
And one of the...
So was Saigon, I mean, is that where a lot of the refugees would just go to Saigon for protection?
Well, every large, you know, city, you know, whether it's Hue, you know, Da Nang and stuff like that, once the attack started, you know, during Tet, you know, people were fleeing everywhere.
Yeah,
And they tended to go the areas where you had the largest concentration of U.S. forces and other things to provide protection. So essentially, the whole area around Saigon, you know, every major road and everything had roadblocks, you had bunkers, you had everything to try and provide protection. And that became, you know, the 25th role, and certainly NOAA's role, you know, during Tet, was to try and root out wherever these groups were.
So they were really mostly night raids then? Night raids?
No, not necessarily, not during
Well,
Tet.
during Tet, it was all day long.
All day long.
It was, and you see there again, like I say, I got there in October of 67, and was there until October 68. We had never seen any North Vietnamese soldiers, and we had to deal with the VC and so forth. But like I say, basically we dealt with them in the fact that we were pulling security for the land clearing operations, the roam plow. They were like D8, D9 Caterpillars, Caterpillar tractors that had like he said, a sharp blade on it. That was a specialty blade that would basically cut through or knock down trees. And there again, clearing rubber plantations, just you knock them down. After they defoliate, within a week, maybe 2 weeks, they'd all be dead, which amazed me that they didn't realize it was hurting people also, because it'd kill a full-size rubber tree in 2 weeks. And they would knock them down. And they had 2 of these roam plows. They called them roam plows because a specialty blade was made in Rome, Georgia. So they were called roam plows. But after they knock them all down, they had two D9s that had a stretch of anchor chain hooked between them that they would drag all this stuff up into a big pile, and then we'd pour diesel on it and burn it, or they would pour diesel on it and burn it. And but one of the big differences in a straight leg infantry unit and a mechanized infantry unit is during the monsoons, we basically pulled road security because armor sinks into the mud. So we couldn't be in the field with it. So during the monsoons, we basically pull road security. And straight leg infantry units still, they walked around.
What's that line up there that says war zone? I mean, was that like zone to remove people from that area?
Well, a lot of, you just had different ways of designating certain areas
Yeah.
where you were operating.
And I think that was War Zone 1. We were in like War Zone 3, the Saigon area, and it went to Tay Ninh, went to the Cambodian border, you know, and Tay Ninh was basically on the border.
Yeah.
And what was the significance of the Iron Triangle? I mean, that
Well,
sounds pretty
that's-
ominous.
It's just an area where, it's just an area they designated as the triangle where they had a tremendous bunker complex,
Yeah.
you know, tunnel complex.
So it was an enemy fortification,
Right.
more or less.
Yeah.
But you see also they had, in fact, even if you go to Vietnam today, it's one of the things on their tour is the tunnels in and under Cu Chi. They built Cu Chi Base Camp right on top of a tunnel complex and didn't know it. And took them a while to figure out why they were getting people coming into the base camp, you know, and blowing stuff up and then disappearing and stuff, or doing whatever they did. But they were on, and like I say, the tunnels of Cu Chi, and there's actually a book out on that, of the tunnel complex that was under Cu Chi.
Well, anyway, we do need to move on. So
Okay.
you finished up in Vietnam, and then you came back to the U.S.?
Yes. And when I came back to the U.S., I, for some reason, didn't continue being a hairdresser. And for no apparent reason, you know, I don't know why. Even to this day, I don't. And the other thing that I did is I stopped painting. I didn't do any more painting until after I retired. And there again,
Does that infer you were doing painting before?
I was doing painting before, and but there again, and the only reason I can give for that is I was
Busy.
busy. I was trying to raise a family, had other interests, you know, and so I just didn't. I didn't continue in the beauty industry. I became a carpenter. That's what I'd done before I went into service, so I became a carpenter then, and then applied for the Denver Fire Department and became a Denver firefighter. And that's what I did actually for my living. Was I was a Denver firefighter for 34 years. But the schedule that firefighters work in Denver, we work 24 hours on, 48 hours off. It's a lot of time off. So most firefighters have a second job of some kind. So over the years, I ran a fairly successful carpentry contracting company. I also had a couple of pretty successful gun businesses where I sold firearms and so forth. And so I did that as day-off jobs, you know, in addition to being a firefighter. But my main career was I was a firefighter.
Now, you said you couple years after you retired then, you got back into painting?
I got back into painting, and there again, it's, well, it was just actually for something to do. We traveled, we own a motorhome, and we travel a lot in a motorhome.
And this is Char's.
Yeah,
your
I'm
boss.
his wife.
Yeah.
I'm a volunteer here.
But for something to do, sitting around the campground and stuff, I just decided to start painting.
Shotgun Sports representing the Denver Fire Department. And actually, he's the only Denver firefighter that has competed in more than 10 of the World Police Fire Games in shotgun sports and has medaled in them. I carried the guns, that's what my job is. I don't shoot, I just carry the guns.
And that was something, a passion that I took up. Actually, I started shooting, and what I shoot is trap and skeet and sporting clays. And if any of you are shotgun shooters or whatever, you're probably familiar with at least trap. And I started shooting trap for the World Police Fire Games in 1993. And like Char says, we've attended 10 or 11. And the World Police Fire Games, what they are, they're games that have nothing to do with fire department as such, but they're similar. The sports are similar to the Olympics, you know, type of sports, track and field, archery, and so forth. In fact, we have a retired firefighter back there that competes in archery, John Webb, and he's been to several of the games. But they have golf and so forth, and shotgun shooting. And they're held somewhere in the world every 2 years. They're held in the U.S. and Canada also, but they're somewhere. We've been to like Stockholm, Sweden, Barcelona, Spain, Melbourne, Australia, Adelaide, Australia, Calgary, Canada, Vancouver, Quebec. You know, so they're held all over the world, somewhere every 2 years. And they have approximately 10,000 people show up at these things.
60 countries.
From
About 60 countries.
about 60 countries are represented. And so that's what I've done the last.
So when you started painting about your Vietnam experience, did you have pictures or what did you have?
Yeah, I have pictures, and
Well, why don't we just start commenting on some
okay.
of your exhibits upstairs?
This painting here I call Ma Deuce in Paradise, which you service members know that M50, you know, 50 caliber machine guns called a Ma Deuce. Now this I took from a picture that I saw in a magazine. It's called Guns of the Delta. It was a black and white picture, so the color, I had to add color, but it was a black and white picture. And I don't know, I just found it interesting because one of the missions that we used to have to do periodically is we would have to go down to the Saigon River, secure a beachhead, and then resupply the riverine. And sometimes they'd be there just a day, sometimes they'd be there a week, you know, at a specific place. But I always found the riverine boats interesting.
So that's what we call the Brownwater Navy.
The Brownwater Navy. So whenever I saw this picture, you know, in Guns of the Delta, you know, that's what my interest was. So. Okay.
Now this one.
Now this one is called
I think
Firebase Buell.
Okay.
Now they don't have that. If you have the list here, it's a little bit mismarked, but this is called Firebase Buell.
Okay.
And what it is a picture of this. Is our ammo dump over there, our command track.
Probably that.
our command tractor's right here with the boots hanging on it.
Oh, okay.
Now it's, headquarters company had 4 APCs and 1 command track. And, this little cover type thing is a cover that comes with the command track that supposedly you hang on the side up high to where you can keep the radios and stuff outside and so forth. But we always kept the radios inside, and this kept it fairly low because we slept in there. We never slept in any of the APCs, never slept in any of them because if they got hit with an RPG or something like that. But we slept outside. And just some of the stuff that's scattered around there. We've got a water jug. We got our sea rats, of course. We've got a white box over there that has a Red Cross deal on it, and what that was our beer cooler. But actually what it was they sent plasma over there in styrofoam, in a styrofoam box. And so the blood boxes, and we just called them a blood box, which they made a good cooler because they were made out of styrofoam. So that's just some of the stuff sitting around there. And like our ammo is just, it's just sitting out in the field. Sitting out there because there again, you hear a lot about the VC mortaring and stuff and how accurate they were and how they drew maps of them. So we never found that to be true. They just shot stuff in and they either hit something or they missed it. Or they didn't hit anything, they hit just out in the field. And we found that the chances of them of taking and putting sandbags around our ammo and stuff to try to protect it, the chances of them hitting our ammo was as good as not hitting it. So we didn't even mess with it, and we never had on a fire base like this, we never had them to hit any of our ammo with.
Well, normally you guys move fairly frequently too. What's interesting is when a mech unit goes to the field, you simply take all your APCs and you put them in a circle. Kind of like what
circle the wagon.
You basically circled the wagon because you all had 50 calibers mounted on the top. Now, if the infantry leg unit went to the field, they always called us engineers because we would have to come along and push up a berm for them kind of around the area to help them protect it.
Yeah.
And then they want wire, and then they want claymore mines out. So you're always busy with the leg units because they are not going to move as often as these guys.
Yeah. And we always carried that. You see, we always carried concertina wire. Usually we had
big roll.
each APC had a roll of concertina wire on the front. Plus, we carried, we're able to carry everything in there. And,
Well, let's go. Moving on. Quickly.
This painting here is, it's actually down at consummate. When we were, after Tet, we were stationed right across the runway at consummate, there again pulling security for consummate, while they were building a bunker line, because up until Tet, they didn't have a bunker line around consummate. And this is, the name of this picture is just an endless task, because filling sandbags is something that we did continually. We'd set up a base, and whether we were going to be there a week or a month, we didn't know. But our tents and so forth, we built a wall 3 feet high around it. At least when you're laying on a cot, you're above it. But there again, chances of a mortar hitting inside the tent were just as good as a mortar hitting outside. So, but we filled sandbags, and we had to fill 100 sandbags a day. This is called Security for the Promised Land. Here again, this is a headquarters company tracks and so forth, and we're set up across, and that's a command track, the tall one.
It looks different than the normal APC.
And it had all of our radios and stuff in, because they had each of the companies in the battalion every night would call in their ammo requests for the next day, and to the radios, and then we'd call it back to base camp. They would fill the orders in the base camp. Then it would come out the next day on the Chinooks. The Chinook helicopters carried everything out. But this is and
I like this little
yeah.
right there.
And if this is a collage of several pictures that I took, that happens to be my track crew on the track that
Oh, this, guys?
yeah, and just they're clowning around, and I've got some actual photographs over there. But this is just this is where the location, and this has a story to it. One of the few that I had. It's called Security for the Promised Land, because it's like in the Bible, Moses was not allowed to go to the Promised Land because of his transgressions against God. Well, we caused some trouble trying to go over to the NCO club at Consummate and got banished from going over into, we were not allowed to go over to the air base. And you see, we saw the airmen, they had the NCO clubs, they had cold beer,
Oh, yeah, all of that.
and they had Betsy Ross hamburger buns.
Air conditioning.
And air conditioning. And you see, we ate hamburgers on sliced bread. So it was the land of cold beer and Betsy Ross hamburger buns. But we were here looking into the promised land knowing that we couldn't go over for cold beer and hamburger buns.
And this was a C-130.
A C-130.
Yeah, that's a workhorse Air Force transport.
This is called the barber shop. And our battalion barber got his position the same way I got mine. The barber was going home, and for whatever reason, he was next. He had never cut hair before, didn't know anything about it. But
You could have volunteered for that.
Did you provide some
Guidance.
mentoring for
No.
the barber?
But, you know, so it didn't take him long to where he got it. Army haircuts aren't that complicated anyway. But he became the battalion barber. And this is just a sketch, basically. It's of the leaflet propaganda. This chew hoy means I give up or I surrender or something. But they used to kick these things out of C-130s by the millions, I think. But it's propaganda leaflets that they used to scatter all over the country over there. And I don't know how many, at least thousands of them, that they would float down and so forth. This is called Right Away. It just depicts us out on road security, and basically whenever Army convoys and when we were on the road, Vietnamese traffic stopped.
Yeah, you definitely want to get out of the way.
Yeah. And this just depicts, we're coming into a hamlet. We used to stay at hamlets at night. We'd pull in. And this, we was pulling into this hamlet, and we came in one day, and this sign is right in the middle of the road. The old man living there put the sign up right in the middle of the road because he wanted us to quit driving down by their houses because we may, you know, armor makes a mess.
Yeah. Especially if there's been a recent rain or anything.
But real fast, I'll explain. This is an M48 Patton. We were a mechanized infantry unit, and so we always had, we called them, they were a troop of cavalry. That's still the true cavalry in the Army. It's not the air cav, but it's the tankers. They were cavalry. So a mechanized infantry unit would have a troop of cavalry with them. That was, ours was the 2nd of the 34th Armor. You have mechanized cavalry outfits that have both. But But this painting here, if you notice the tank, it's got sandbags all over it, all over the turret. This is a GI invention of pre-Chad armor that they have on armor today. And what that was, around the bottom of the turret, they'd take a bunch of old road plates and weld a ledge on it to where it would hold these sandbags. These sandbags are not really filled with sand, they're filled with dirt. It's called laterite. And it's like a sticky mud when it's wet.
Red color all is.
And it's red, but whenever it dries, it is hard as a rock. It's a brick. So the purpose of that is an RPG would hit those sandbags, and it's hard enough that it would set the shape charge off before it got to the armor. And it hit, and the shape charge would go off in the sandbags. You'd get some concussion inside, but it wouldn't shoot a hole through your armor. So, 2nd to 34th anyway, they had that on all theirs now. You don't see that on all the tanks in Vietnam.
And again, I think you're pointing out too, when you normally were in motion or traveling, everyone tried to sit on top.
Yeah, because you didn't ride in it. And there again, you know, the driver, we had like 2 or 3 layers of sandbags on the floor of these APCs, plus the driver always sat on several sandbags in case.
Was the driver, I mean, he probably had a backup, did he, from one of the riflemen, or how were the drivers trained?
Well, everybody could drive one of those.
Oh, okay, so everybody could be a driver.
Everybody could be a driver.
Yeah.
Because you see, very seldom, even though there were supposedly 10 men assigned to these things, very seldom were we ever full strength.
Right.
And you see in headquarters company, we only had 4 or 5 people on an APC, because our APCs, we carried stuff like, here again, a mechanized infantry unit was a little different in the sense that actually we tried to provide more creature comforts to the line companies. Had to do with morale and so forth. But in one of our tracks we carried a shower point, because at least once a week we try to make it out, which then going to 4 companies would be once a month. We would take a shower point out whenever we were delivering ammo to them.
Yeah.
We'd take a shower point out, we'd take a hot meal out, we had a table and chairs that we hauled out. We'd always take a hot meal out of some kind, but in Mermite cans, because in our fire bases, we always provided cooks, a cook tent and a mess tent. So there again, that was straight leg infantry units didn't have that option. But that's what we carried in our tracks and so forth. And one of our tracks was full of clothing, where we called it DXing. You could DX your clothing and get not necessarily new clothing, but it would be clean. You know, so anybody that wanted to take advantage of this, we'd go out to wherever a company was set up. And while we're delivering their ammo, we would provide these services for them. If they wanted to, if they didn't want to partake in it, they didn't have to. But it was there for them.
And like a mobile 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But a major challenge what Vietnam was versus what we do now is, you know, your individual replacements. So every person, you know, from day one you landed, you know, you had 1 year till you were rotating out. So within a unit, at any time, you might have a quarter, at times, depending how bad it was, a third, people either coming in or going or getting ready to rotate. Yeah. So you had constant turmoil in terms of getting people trained up, you know, knowing their job. You know, some are going to get, you know, shot and injured severely. So you were always kind of under strength in terms of people trained to operate with your unit.
Yeah, and it's a very inefficient way to run the military. And General Schwarzkopf, who was a colonel, I think, in Vietnam, realized that, and it's the last war that we fought like that. Iraq, everywhere else, units go as a unit and they come back as a unit. You know, they spend their time there and they come back as a unit. It's none of this, because you see, myself personally, the first couple of months I was there, I wasn't very efficient because I was afraid I was going to get killed. Okay? You don't know the sound of anything. After a couple of months, you learn to realize it's outgoing artillery rather than incoming mortars. You learn the sound of different weapons, what an M16 sounds like, what an AK. And then it's not that you don't want to get killed or get afraid of being killed, but you start performing, you start doing what you're supposed to do. But then you get down to the last 30 days and you're a short timer, you're already thinking, well, I've made it. Gosh dang it, I've only got 30 days before I come home, and you start getting inefficient in your job again, or I did. So, but anyway. This is called, well, it has two names. It has Road Security Tainin to Khartoum, and it's also called Recon by Fire. Because in recon by fire is you just shoot a copious quantity of ammunition out into the jungle and just spray it. You're not really shooting at anything, but if anything is out there, it's dead.
And normally you wouldn't be doing it everywhere. You know, along any particular route, you're going to run into certain areas
where you've had trouble before.
Or some dense, vegetation. So just ensure the other side keeps their head down. You just pepper it and then scoop right through.
And this was from a picture in the division's newspaper that they printed every month. That was sort of like a propaganda thing of what the various units in the division had done that month. But this is 5th Mechanized. And this is just a picture. Here again, artillery units and mechanized units. And I'm not sure about straight leg units, but we pick up stray dogs. Okay. And being that we're in sort of a permanent type situation living-wise, there's always dogs running around. And like with us, we had a mongoose. And the mongoose kept the cobras down, and we didn't have to worry about snakes because of the mongoose, and we fed him, and he stayed right there and took care of snakes because there were a lot of snakes.
Well, anyway, that kind of finishes this. But we're going to adjourn to the library, where we're now going to have a nice little reception. We have some cake, and please visit some more with Noah. But Noah, thank you.
Well, thank you.
Okay, well, we have one more thing.
Real quick, I volunteered 2 years ago at the Vietnam Traveling Mall, which was in Meade, Colorado. And I, through my mother, I've had experiences. We met the planes coming from Vietnam to Lowry, bringing the wounded on C-130s. And I was kind of like a tour guide, I guess, at the huge semi that had all kinds of info. But a lady came up to me the next shift. I did 3 shifts while I was there. She presented this to me for Noah, and it's handmade. And this was, I guess I have to get over here. This, she just came to me and presented this to me, and what really got me was on the ribbon it says "Welcome Home." And many of you know that the Vietnam War was not a popular war, but Noah was thanked for this, so it was quite a surprise to be able to take this home for him. That's all.
Oh, and Noah, we'd like to give you one of our challenge coins
Oh, thank
to
you.
commemorate your time with us, but thank you so much.
Yes, thank you very much.
So again, please join us. We'll shift on over to the library and have some refreshments and visit some more with Noah here. Yeah.